Very nice, very nice. Welcome back to this edition of the New Variety Arts Show. It's our pleasure to welcome you, and we have a lot of fun on this show. If you've been watching the last couple of weeks, you'll know exactly what I mean. The New Variety Arts Show explores variety arts in the 90s, and you get to meet clowns, mimes, jugglers, magicians, belly dancers, all kinds of variety arts entertainers, and get to know them just a little bit better. And we hope that the next time you encounter a variety arts performer in person and watch their performance, you'll enjoy them just that little bit more. And we want to say hello to our musical director right now, Mr. Van Corriton.
Hello, Brad. Where's the belly dancer?
You're still waiting for the belly dancer.
Yeah.
I promise we will get one here for you. Can you play some
Middle
Eastern
sure can.
music?
Oh, sure.
Well, that's enough for me.
I'm waiting. I'm ready.
I will get one in here for you. You know, today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of variety arts entertainment, a particular aspect of the history of variety arts, because our show is not only entertaining, we hope, but educational as well. And we have a very special guest, and we're going to get to him in just a minute. He also is a mind reader, a mentalist.
A mind reader?
Yes.
Hey, then he knows what I'm thinking about, right?
Yes,
about the belly dance.
And be very careful what you think, okay? I knew another mind reader one time who attempted to read the mind of Mel Tillis.
Oh?
Yes, he ended up with a migraine headache. It was kind of it didn't work out too well. Anyway, what was I going to tell you about?
Tell me about this. I noticed this over there. I dragged it over. Your latest recognition?
Well, I've just recently presented with this certificate here. I've been named to the second edition of Who's Who in Entertainment.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and I understand you made the first edition.
First edition.
Well, this is no schlock program, folks. We have some Who's Who folk here, so that was kind of nice, and I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Beautiful.
Well, very good. We are going to go over and meet our guests now. Pay close attention, because you're going to see some things from around the world today that you have probably never seen before. And you're going to meet our guest, and his name is Bob Bluemle. Bob, thanks for being with us here today.
Fun, Brad.
All right. Well, I must tell the folks a little bit about your background. You are
First of all, I do not belly dance.
Oh, we were hoping. Van's been waiting for weeks now, but we'll get one on here one of these days. Dr. Juris, as you are also known.
By my closest friends.
And you are a corporate attorney, you are a traveler, you are an author, you are a lecturer, you are a talk show host, and you're an entertainer. And I must tell you that when I begged you to come on the show, you were concerned we'd have nothing to talk about. And I think we'll have...
Nothing of interest.
We'll have more than enough to talk about. Entertainment and variety arts, by reading your biography and the fact that I've known you now for a couple of years, has obviously played a very large part in your entire life. Can you tell us when that started? When was your first recollection of getting involved with entertainment?
I think I was 8, and the traditional thing for a magician, somebody bought me a magic trick, an aunt bought me a magic trick, and I got hooked. And I worked my way through college and law school doing magic, emceeing, and then I left it for about 25 years and came back to it recently.
Now you had a very interesting experience one time in a spook show that you traveled with. We had George Sands, Jay Malbrough have also been in the show, and I think Jay traveled with a spook show at one time, and we talked about that. But tell us, because that's kind of a lost art now, the spook show.
And it's kind of funny, because you would think that with as much attention is paid in films, that spook shows to horror, the spook shows would be popular now. A spook show was given usually at midnight. It preceded the horror show. They would have a warm-up film of some type, held here, for example, in Phoenix at the Fox Theater. And these spook shows would travel throughout the nation. And they had several, well, for example, the one that I was in traveled, we went to Globe in Miami, Tucson, Phoenix, and part of my job was to, I played the part of a gorilla in the show, and toward the end of the show, I was to come out in my gorilla costume and with a great roar start down the steps into the audience. The lights would then go out. There was a big flash, and that would sort of temporarily blind people. And then I would whip off the gorilla head and wander through the audience. My face was painted with a luminous paint to be a skull.
Oh.
And I would bob my head as if a ghost were, a skeleton were walking or going through the audience. So I did that in Tucson, and we had somebody try to break in backstage before, and I had a blank pistol that I carried for other purposes of the show. So I ran them off. And that kind of spooked me, so to speak, about going into the audience, so I didn't. And at the end of the, the lights go off. I'm supposed to be out in the audience bobbing around. I didn't do it. I kept the gorilla head on. But we had these long fishing poles painted black with these luminous cheesecloths over it, and you would float those over the head of the audience.
They would look like
It would look like
materializations of
ghosts floating around and so forth. So after the show, he said, "How did it go?" And I said, "Well, you know, I didn't go down into the audience tonight." And he said, "It was just as well, because last year the kid that we had doing this got stabbed." Because it was a predominantly Hispanic audience, and a lot of them believe in ghosts, and so it was.
It was a frightening,
so, yeah.
frightening experience.
Yeah.
Well, where does your nom de performance come from, Dr. Juris?
Well, let me tell you one more story.
Oh,
about the
I'm
spook
sorry.
show, 'cause
Okay,
I
we're
think
continuing with the spook show.
Right. Well,
experience. Because that wasn't that you.
the
wrote
most
it-
memorable part of that
Okay,
was
no.
something else, and you remarked on it when I mentioned it to you. I was 16 or 17 years old at the time, and I went backstage. And at one point in time, there was a costume change, and the wife of the performer was a beautiful girl who assisted him, 6 feet tall, statuesque blonde, and she made a costume change, but it was a complete costume change. And she had no dressing room, and so she was changing behind the scenes, and I had to cross from one side to the other, and I made it a point to do that several times during that process. It was very memorable to a 16 or 17-year-old boy.
I can imagine.
Not a very amusing story, but I thought I would.
Well, I'm sure that the attorneys and judges that you argue your cases in front of will be very interested to find out that you wore a gorilla costume.
Fortunately, they won't watch it.
Well, we hope so. Maybe they will. Your resume in law is very, very impressive. I have it here somewhere, but you have you went to Indiana State. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Indiana University undergraduate. University of Michigan Law School.
Yes. And some of the accomplishments that you have
You can just
achieved
leave them lost there.
well, I don't have it in front of me, but it's very, very impressive. Law demands a certain amount of logic and proving detail and bringing everything out to light, and yet some would say law is also a little sleight of hand of convincing people to believe the facts in one light or another.
I wouldn't agree with the latter. I really wouldn't. No, juries are pretty smart. They see through all of that.
So I guess the question I was leading up to was that is the magic and the legerdemain and the mentalism kind of a counterpoint for you in your personal life to the rigid requirements of the law?
It is no less rigid, I think, but it's or demanding, but it is it's yeah, sure, it's some people fly fish and other people do other, but there are a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors who are magicians. I think it's a chance as a lawyer to do something does involve your hands in part, does involve your mind to a great degree, but it's sort of a different approach to your mind.
And yet still dealing with the psychology of
that's
your
pretty
fellow
much,
humans.
Yeah, that's pretty much all of it.
Yeah. When did you realize that the law was going to be your future and your career? Because obviously your background as a child and a young man growing up was very much in show business. But when did you say, "Well, I'm going to be an attorney"? Or
every test I ever took in my life said, you know, those Cooter preference tests you used to take said you got to be an attorney. And I was 14 when I decided to be a lawyer.
I'll be. Well, that's very good. Now, you have traveled extensively around the world. I believe you've performed in 100 different countries.
105, yeah.
105 now. How did that develop then into the lecturing and the photography, the travel films that you present now?
I had a really fun thing happen. I was a senior in college and at Indiana University, and the president of the university called me and said, "How would you like to spend this summer in the Far East with a USO show?" I had entertained, as I said, and done a lot of emceeing and magic, and so he said the other members of the troupe will be 27 girls who were in the Bells of Indiana, a singing group, and one other fella. And I said,
You
I had
like
to
the
think
odds.
about that about 10 seconds. I said, yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. And so we did. We went to Korea. That was, in fact, I just saw For the Boys, and it was very nostalgic to me performing, because we performed on the backs of trucks, and we
That
did
was
about
with
5
Bette Midler and
right. We did about 5 shows a day, all over Korea, and then in Japan, and we traveled also to Midway and Wake and entertained troops, and that sort of got me interested in foreign travel.
Were you taking photographs and films?
Not at that time. I got interested in photography later, but I traveled. I've sort of a sub-hobby. I travel to mysterious places of the world. I seek those out.
So you probably have that Time Life set of books.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mysterious places.
I'm working my way through them, actually going to those places.
Where are some of the more exotic places that you've been to?
Well, let's see. I've been to Tibet. I have been to Easter Island.
Now, this is where, Easter Island, is this where they have the stone carvings?
Yeah,
that,
I have a photo I'll show you a little bit
okay,
later.
and they don't understand how they got there. Apparently, the rock formation is not...
Thor Heyerdahl has a theory about that, but not everybody agrees with it. But yeah, it's kind of a mystery, and they are, I'll tell you this, it's a very evocative place. When you are there, you feel a power, and I don't say that lightly. I've been to Machu Picchu in
God bless
Peru.
you. I'm sorry, what was that again?
I went to Easter Island, as I said. I went to, spent this summer, I went to Stonehenge and investigated the crop circles in England.
Now, did you see these two fellows that came out and said that they were doing it with a 2x4?
Except, you know, I just wrote an article about that. There were 1,000 of those crop circles in 1990, and the most they can account for is 6 between the two of them. So either there are a lot of people doing that, or something else is causing some of it.
It would have to be a full-time job for them to do.
Yeah, because she has to be during the growing season.
Yeah. Now, what about performing in other countries? Because you've probably done magic and mentalism. How is the mind-reading art, the psychic phenomenon demonstrations that you give, how is that regarded in some of the other countries?
It's difficult to do because of the language barrier. You pretty well have to make things move, use psychokinesis for them to understand it. Much better, much more easily understood are straight magic tricks, but they are not viewed, for example, in third world countries often. I performed in New Guinea as an example, and I was the only non-native there. There were 5,000 at a great ceremonial dance, and I did a very simple production of a silk scarf and some other things, and they, instead of the reaction here, which would be, oh, that's a clever trick, there was a, I think I could have been elected tribal chief. But that's the fun of it, is because they really take magic the way it once was.
It was, yeah, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Has doing this ever put you in danger? I mean, have you ever felt like...
I give a bad act and I'm in danger every time.
Well, we're not talking about the back alley show clubs.
No, I don't think so. Actually, it's a tension reliever usually.
But none of these natives have ever. You've never felt threatened, or they felt threatened.
It works the other way. They are afraid of the magic, and I've had that happen. I've been in Vietnam and I've been in Cambodia, for example, where I have done magic, and again, it's a backing away kind of thing, because they view magic and magicians in a very different way. They're not jugglers. The way we view them.
Right. Describe the differences, if you would, between black magic and white magic, because we have this, we have somewhat a biblical misunderstanding, I think, of the difference between modern-day magicians and the kind of shaman wonder workers that are trying to do their thing to gain control and power, etc.
It's very. We don't have time for it in this show, but it is fascinating to look at the history of religion and the history of magic and how they're intertwined. And there's a book that I read recently which traces the history of show business, starting with the shamans coming through the rock and roll groups. and interrelating Harry Houdini and Bessie Smith and a variety of other people, up to today's rock and roll groups, saying it's all part of the same continuum. It's all a form of entertainment. That's not to put religion down, but there is an entertainment aspect of religion. Black and white magic are terms that really don't exist in most countries where those things exist, but I'll show you something if we have a chance.
Yeah, you've brought some objects along.
Yeah.
Now, these are things that you have acquired on your world travels, and
Right.
you have been very, very generous to bring these along.
Well,
and I'm sure these are very rare.
They're hard to get because a shaman, each of these things actually belonged to a shaman.
Now, a shaman, just quickly, a brief definition of a shaman would be?
A shaman is a person who, this is worldwide, who has been brought into, through a process of initiation, a secret kind of society wherein he has special powers. I'll hold this
front of that. I think we might be able
and
to see.
this is a piece that I got in New Guinea, and it belonged to a shaman. It was carried in a small bag under the shoulder. You want me to turn it from side to side?
Yeah.
And this is a piece which has both, as you would call them, white and black powers. It has the ability, for example, to ward off an evil spell. It has the ability to be used to invoke an evil spell. It also has, there's a kind of funny story. I keep these things in a special drawer in my home. When I got this, I was told that this would vanish, had the ability to find its way home, and I laughed at that. It, in point of fact, it did vanish from a drawer. My wife said that it had, she had not touched it, the maid had not touched it. 6 months later, it showed up again. So I give this a lot lot of respect.
Well, we're lucky it's here tonight. Van, keep a close eye on that, will you? If it disappears, let us know. Now, some of these
Here's
other
a piece.
items
Here's a piece from Africa.
Now, what is this? Do you know what this is? Is this a horn of an animal?
This is a lion's tail.
A lion's tail.
And this is carved. Again,
So again, we may want to put this
give it a
behind
little
something
definition.
light. Yeah.
And
this is carved. This looks like a female figure. Is that correct?
yeah, this is an animal horn, probably an antelope horn. And this is a carved female figure. And it's used in Africa, hold this horizontally.
Okay.
And little corns are put down by the shaman, by the witch doctor, and he taps these, and these form into little, it's like reading tea leaves. These form, and then he reads the future of the person. Again, it can be a black future or a positive future.
Depends on how much you pay him.
I think it has some, just like the fortune tellers in this country. Here is a human bone, which is a piece that I got from Tibet, and this also belonged to a Tibetan shaman, and it's like it would be comparable to a magician's wand in this country, and it would be held and shaken for invoking various.
I'm not
kinds
feeling
of
well, Bob.
Well, let me do it the other way.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I feel much better now.
At any rate, those are difficult things to find because the shamans don't give them up.
Now, you are presented with these? I mean, you have befriended these?
No,
people?
I have.
You didn't beat them over the head for it?
I did not meet the owners of any of these items. I had to track them down through dealers and so forth.
Oh, I see. So it was a gift shop at a bus station in Taiwan? No, okay,
No,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Those are fascinating. Let's take a look at some of the photos that you've brought along of your travels. Now, you do travel lectures and what? You show films and describe the different countries that you... let's see if we can put these over here. This is...
That's in New Guinea, and it is the piece of carving that I have there is as you see, it's about as tall as I am, and it's from a spirit house. A spirit house is where all of the sacred things of the various tribes are kept. That's an orator's stool. Has a shelf on the back, and every time that one of the elders gets up to make a speech, He has to whack this, the back of that to make his point with a sheaf of reeds, and each time he makes a point he has to put one down. As he talks he has fewer reeds and his points go by the board, and I thought for a magician, or for a lawyer, that would be a good thing to have.
Okay, we'll get to this kind of quickly because we've got some other things we want to
That's from New Guinea. That's among the mudmen in New Guinea.
I think I saw this on a Superman episode. That's very interesting. Now they make these masks themselves, is that right?
Yeah, and we can kind of, if you got try it on time. This is from Easter Island. You're mentioning the heads in Easter Island.
These are the stone carvings that they were talking about on Easter Island. And apparently, the rock formations are not indigenous to the island, so they believe that those rock were brought from some other location, or so brought great distances, or dropped by ancient astronauts.
On the other hand, there is a quarry nearby.
Yes,
who's counting?
That could be. Tell us how mentalism, mind reading, eventually took over traditional magic for you as a performance vehicle for yourself personally.
I traveled when I was, again, a teenager here in Phoenix with a fellow named Doc Conrad, and he was a very unusual fellow. He ultimately was killed while performing a bullet catch, and he's one of 12 who have been killed doing that. I think the 13th just died recently. Very dangerous effect. And anyhow, I traveled with him, and I saw him do it, and I got interested in it and in the power of the mind, and so as I traveled through the Far East, I studied that sort of thing.
Now, we're getting close on time. I want to bring up a couple of other things. You are authoring a book on a very famous mentalist, mind reader, psychic performer that, what era are we talking about here, Dr. Jacks?
He was performed in Europe just before World War II and came to America just after World War II.
And he died how long ago?
He died in 1960.
Died in 1960, and he did perform in this area, is that correct, in Arizona?
He came here once, but he performed in New York principally. He was a society entertainer. In Europe, he entertained the Aga Khan and other royalty. He was a mind reader, interesting fellow. He's great.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Continue with your thought, but I would like you to show this as you're
book,
speaking. This is the book of the Book of Mysteries, I think it's called.
Yeah, this it looks like a book and has on the cover a silver medallion, which...
you went to some trouble to recover that, didn't you?
Yeah, I had to, for 6 years, I tried to find this book, and the medallion was actually given to Dr. Jacks by the Aga Khan. At any rate, this is not a book. In fact, if you open it, and you might hold, thank you, there is a pad in which he performed his magic, a close-up pad, and then inside the book are his various tricks that he did. And
this looks like a slate of some kind,
right,
a small
dictionary, right,
some keys
and so forth. And there are several layers of this, and each layer has, thank you, each layer has a set of tricks in it. But this became very famous. In fact, it's probably the world's among magicians, one of the world's most famous props. Yeah. And I was lucky enough through a set of circumstances to get that.
Well, thank you for bringing that, because that is an historical artifact that deserves to be preserved and shared with future generations. I also want to mention that Bob Bluemle, Robert Bluemle, Dr. Juris, is also a talk show host. You do sort of what I do.
I'd rather be in your chair.
But you have your own show called Law Talk, and that runs on Dimension Cable, Channel 34. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that show? And
sure. It's on Tuesdays at 8:30 in the morning, and Wednesdays at 6:30 in the evening. Each Tuesday and Wednesday. A lot of people follow the Law Talk diet because it interferes with your eating. You don't feel like eating after you've heard all the legal talk. But we interview lawyers in particular specialties, and we ask them all the questions that if a first-time client might ask about divorce or bankruptcy or things that affect them, wills and trusts and so forth.
So this is geared very much for the lay public then,
right.
as opposed to an inside kind
it's not for lawyers at all.
Right.
Right.
Very good. What sort of cases are you? I mean, we can't talk about specifics, but I mean, you're doing corporate law, or what are some of the interesting aspects of law?
Well, we're working on a case right now, which will be, I think, of interest to all Arizonians. I'm not at liberty to disclose it, but it has to do with some environmental matters.
Concerns.
And we do, the people who bought bread and milk and who got refunds for that, we handle those cases, the bread and milk antitrust cases. And those are the ones that the public would be most interested in.
Now, you are able to argue in front of the United States Supreme Court. Your resume is absolutely incredible. You have a background as a broadcaster as well. Can we mention the early show that you were involved in? Because I think we probably...
KPHO in 1950. That was much like cable is now. You could kind of walk in off the street, and if you say, I want to do a show, they let you do it. So I did a show when I was in high school called Dinner Cruise, and I emceed and did magic, and that was on for, I think, 1 season. It was a great show.
Very interesting.
I mean, it was a fun show.
And you are also the former chairman of the Scottsdale, I want to get this right, Cable TV Committee. Now, we're on public access in the Phoenix system, Dimension Cable.
Right.
We're also seen on some other areas. But Scottsdale was United Cable Company, and you were the chairman of negotiating this franchise agreement, I believe.
What we did was recommend to the city council. We had all of the various companies come to us and tell us what they were going to do, and then we made a recommendation to the city council. Of course, very few of those things got done.
Well,
that's the history of cable.
Well, I understand that Scottsdale just kind of disbanded their public access over there, and of course we're very sorry to hear that, but I don't know if you're following Phoenix's situation, but there are some changes afoot in the way public access is done. So we thank you for being involved and interested in that issue, which is very dear to all of us here on this show as well.
I think public access is a good thing. I think it ought to be continued.
Yeah. You have a background in theater also. You were former president of a winery in Sonoma, or where was it? Sonoma, California, Chalk Hill Winery. You were a film critic for the Phoenix Magazine. Very briefly, because we only have about 30 seconds left here, can you tell us where you feel that the future of variety arts is going to take us into the 90s?
You know, that's hard to predict. I think people will always want to see live performers. But I think the reality of it is that will be fewer and fewer live performances. The economics just don't support it. And there will be more and more electronic. And people from a variety arts will come into television, and that's where it will be.
Yeah. Well, we certainly hope that you're correct. Van, did you know that he was a president of a winery and a film critic for Phoenix Magazine for 3 years? I have one last question to ask him, and you may be interested in the answer to this.
Sure.
Bob, if I may, what wine goes with fried green tomatoes?
I would get a homemade wine that was made in the southern part of the United States. I think that would be perfect.
Well, Bob, we really appreciate you being here. And you didn't think we could talk for 30 minutes, but we did it. And we had a good time. We hope that you did too. I want to thank our guest, Bob Bluemle, also known as Dr. Juris, our musical conductor, Van Corriton, and you, the viewers, for being here on this edition of the New Variety Arts Show. Tune in next week, won't you? And support variety arts in your community. Bye-bye, everybody.